Thank you for taking the time to meet today. Account-based marketing is becoming synonymous with B2B marketing, with ABM strategies delivering superior ROI to B2B marketers who adopt it. Today, I want to introduce the macro shifts we're observing in our industry and make the connection on why LinkedIn is foundational to a successful ABM strategy, especially now. Before we start talking about our platform, I would like to share some perspective on where marketing is today and where it's quickly moving. But of course, before that, let's get some housekeeping done before we kick off this webinar. I want to run through some housekeeping to ensure you have the best experience. There is no separate audio portion for this webinar. You should be able to hear us through your computer speakers. If you're having difficulty, please ensure your volume is at a high level. If you're experiencing difficulties, please make sure that Flash is enabled and try refreshing your screen or logging back in and out. We have our team available to answer any of your questions, so please use the Q&A portal to ask a question at any time, and we will endeavor to get back to you as soon as possible. We will also have time at the end where our team will be online answering questions. Please be patient. We try and get through as many of them as possible. You will also find some resources to the right hand of the screen that will also help you get started with some of the tools we mentioned today. At the bottom of our screen, we actually have our feedback survey, and we would love to hear your input on today's webinar. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Olivia Kane, and I'm the Senior Content Solutions Consultant for LinkedIn Marketing Solutions. And with me today is Roy Tan, our Senior Account Director, who will also be sharing some nuggets of wisdom when it comes to ABM strategies as well. Our agenda for today, we're going to cover 3 core areas. Number 1, why ABM? And then we're going to move over to 5 steps to creating your ABM content strategy. And lastly, our solutions on how we can drive ABM success. So moving on, why account-based marketing? Well, we're seeing B2B marketers flock to ABM strategies because of the results the strategy produces. The marketers with successful ABM campaigns focus on 3 core areas: driving consensus across the entire buyer committee, building relationships with decision makers, influencers, champions, and basically having relationships with key members in the organization. And lastly, engaging audiences with relevant content in a very trusted context throughout the buying process. What's really interesting about LinkedIn as a platform is that we have over 700 million members, of which we actually cover the entire buying committee, who you can target with our sophisticated targeting tools. We have decision makers, influencers, end users, implementers. And with this, a diverse audience means an ability to reach the entire buying committee. Our research shows that there are approximately 6.8 people that sits on an average buying committee, and we want to make sure that we can reach them all. And one thing I would love to consider here is that when we're thinking about our ABM content strategy, we need to also make sure that it is full funnel in nature. And the reason why is really shown very well in this slide. Rather than saying top of funnel and lower funnel, I think we need to think about our sales funnel and also our marketing funnel as current cash flows and new cash flows. Or future cash flows. We need to think about how we can get future cash flows into our sales pipeline. And that is actually by looking at a full funnel strategy, getting people starting from the awareness phase, and also making sure that we maximize our current cash flows, those who are already aware of us, and making sure that we actually get them converting. So why full funnel content? Well, I just showed you a little bit about future and current cash flows, that we want to maximize both. But what we do know is that we are actually seeing results when we combine the 2 efforts. What you can see here is that if we stick to our acquisition-only initiatives, we are only getting 1 slice of the pie when it comes to our audience and also business growth. When we combine brand and acquisition initiatives and efforts, we are seeing significant results. So what that means is advertisers are finding that synchronized brand and demand drive greater performance, and we are all here to drive business growth. So ultimately, what we want to do is build a winning content-powered ABM strategy to help drive that business growth. So next, I'm going to hand it over to Roy, who's going to talk about getting your strategy off the ground. Over to you, Roy.
Thank you, Olivia. Hi, everyone. My name is Roy, and I'm a Senior Account Director in the Singapore and Southeast Asian markets. I'm very glad to be able to spend some time with you today. So let's dive straight in. How do we get your ABM strategy off the ground? I must say, marketers today face 4 distinct challenges when executing an ABM strategy. They are alignment, knowledge of the buyer, relevancy, and measurement. Let me dive a little deeper in each. For alignment, do we have clear goals on the team? Are we working in silos or in a unified front? Do we have the right buy-ins? And more importantly, are sales and marketing aligned? Knowledge of the buyer. Have we done the right research? Do we know who our buying committee is? What are the personas within this committee that we need to tailor content to? ABM is all about customization, so are we hitting the message home to the right stakeholders involved? Relevancy. Content is the fuel that pulls ABM strategies together. We need to make sure that the content is relevant to the buyer's mindset. Are we solving their business problems, not just industry problems, but going one level deeper? Are we helping them to anticipate their business challenges, and how are we helping to solve them? And lastly, measurement. How do we prove impact along the way using the right measurement milestones on this journey? So step 1, sales and marketing alignment. When we think alignment, we need to relook at our goal. What do we want to do? What are we trying to achieve? What maturity is our customer base, and what kind of strategies do we want to implement? So with acquisition, think of them as getting new buyers into the purchasing cycle. These are typically out-of-market buyers, and they can be thought of as new cash flow coming into the funnel. Expansion is really about leveraging existing customers. What are the ways we can leverage ABM to cross-sell and upsell to this pool of customers who already know about you, but you wish to raise awareness of new products and services? How do you expand into these existing accounts, linking different organization teams and business units together? Lastly, retention. It's really about keeping your customers engaged. Cycle after cycle of getting them more sticky with you as they explore more solutions with you. How do you keep them engaged to keep them renewing and up-leveling their business relationship with you in terms of value? In B2B, we typically see silos working side by side, and I cannot stress the importance of working in unison to reach these same accounts and contexts across marketing and sales. For marketing, the touch points can be marketing automation, paid channels, and events. Whereas on the sales team, touch points are typically CRMs, customer experience, customer support, client references, and so on. These are stark, unique differences, but thankfully there is a common ground in which these can bind together. Content is that ribbon that ties it all together. For example, if marketing does create content that sales can leverage, and vice versa, there is great potential to unlock business growth. Both teams can collaborate on touch points such as social channels, websites, apps, to play on each other's strengths to drive business growth. So these are some questions that both teams need to ask each other and themselves periodically throughout this journey. How many accounts are a good fit? Are we trying too hard to fit these clients into the strategy prematurely? Where is there already strong collaboration or success stories of working well between the teams? How do we scale these efforts? And lastly, working as a combined team means additional resources. What kind of data sets or knowledge expertise will the larger team have access to that can help reach all key buyers? So as your team asked those questions previously, we want to share some tools available as resources. If you couple this with LinkedIn custom insights, we recommend using this 2x2 matrix as a guide or framework for starters. Where do your customers sit? And are you making sure that sales and marketing is aligned on where they think the key customers are? Both teams can plot accordingly, and then the alignment or misalignment will show itself. This will lead to the discussion of which quadrant do you need to focus more on. Do you need to pick up on all the missed opportunities? Is there a need to start looking at untapped audiences as a slow burn? Do you have the resources for that? Should you move in on the warm audience now? And of course, how quickly can you get more customers into that last sweet spot quadrant? Do remember, it's not meant to be a one-time off exercise. In fact, we recommend that it be repeated at least on a 6-month basis to see how accounts move around and whether or not big bets have paid off in terms of strategy. These differences would be the litmus test of whether or not alignment is improving or otherwise. The second resource available would be the company engagement report, and this is available within Campaign Manager tool. This helps to measure the readiness of accounts for more personal outreach based on the engagement of the content and on your website. Thirdly, Sales Navigator. I personally see this as a way to real-time your ABM efforts. Alerts of your saved leads are immediate when social actions such as likes, comments, shares, posts from your company take place. These indicate their readiness for one-to-one engagement with your sales team. Definitely an indicator that sales teams need to be on top of. Let me just provide a short example of how these could work together. So after doing your SWOT analysis and plotting of accounts, marketing created some content and posted it on LinkedIn as part of your ABM strategy for these accounts to interact with. And then, through Sales Navigator and the data that was provided, the sales team is then able to pull through to carry on that conversation based on readiness indicators such as social actions. So this is an example of how alignment happens between the two teams, and leveraging of tools and data helps with that. When you embark on a journey of sales and marketing alignment, it really does improve sales effectiveness. We have seen success as listed. So when 10 or more pieces of content has been served, members are up to 1.38 times more likely to respond to a sponsored message and its call to action. They are also 25% more likely to respond to a Sales Navigator outreach from a company sales team. As they are warmer because of these pieces of content, they are therefore up to 10.7% more likely to respond to a connection request when approached by someone from this company. The fluidity of sales and marketing alignment leads to a lot more warmth and readiness from sales leads to drive that potential business growth. For now, let me hand it back to Olivia, who will bring you through some account segmentation.
Thank you so much, Roy. That was great. So now let's talk a little bit about account segmentation. Well, first, in order to start segmenting our accounts and segmenting our personas, we actually need to understand the types of data that we have access to and also its accuracy. There are 3 types of data to consider when building your account list. The first one is first party, directly provided by your company. And then you also have second party data, which is actually directly provided by another company. And then lastly is third party data, which is aggregated by a data provider. So we need to understand what data we have access to and also the accuracy of that data in order to segment our account lists and also target audience. Another tip that we have to share with you is you can actually define your accounts in partnership with your sales team. And by this, we can actually map out relationship density, potential deal size and revenue, intent models based on deal stage, and also client references within this space. So this is a really great qualitative analysis on how you can actually segment your audience lists. Next, you can actually segment your list. Then once we understand where the data is coming from and where the priorities and the accounts are actually mapped across your sales team, is really segmenting them across these 3 core tiers. And that way you actually have greater control over your investments and your efforts. Now, when we look at segmenting our audience, ultimately, targeting all accounts may not yield the best results. We need to craft various strategies for various tiering or segmentations of your audience. So the first one is one to few. This is when you're going to be looking very, very specifically at maybe a list of companies and you want to tailor your content specifically for a specific company to make sure that we can actually create a blanket of content for the entire buying committee. Next, you have tier 2, which is one to some, where you're crafting an ABM content strategy that is really targeting maybe a vertical or industry sector, and you can tailor your content to that vertical or industry sector. Next is tier 3, which is more of a programmatic approach where you actually have a one-to-many messaging and also content strategy. This is a little bit more scalable and broad-based, but yet it still remains in a targeted account list. Here we actually have one capability where you can leverage LinkedIn's Campaign Manager tool to understand your audience breakdown. And one way is actually uploading your list to discover if you need to segment your list further. And you can actually separate your list according to, for example, the company size. If you want to target smaller companies or larger companies, each one behave very differently, have different buying committee layouts, and also require different content strategies to be reached effectively. Next, let's talk about how you can build out your content plan. This is incredibly crucial. We've got all the nuts and bolts in place in terms of your audience segmenting, the tiering of your account lists, understanding how we can partner with sales and marketing and make sure that alignment is there. Now let's talk a little bit about how we can craft that content. So what does a full ABM content strategy look like? Well, there are two different approaches that you can take. Number one is persona-centric, how we can take a look inward to the key drivers and motivators of your target audience and build a strategy and a plan. This is really great if you have key personas that you're trying to break through or target, and you want to build a content strategy based on their motivators and drivers. Another approach you can take with building a content plan is creating a competitor-centric approach, where really you're just analyzing the competitor landscape to understand where the gaps are in your strategy and potentially in theirs, so you can fill those gaps and make sure that you have a robust strategy that is a cut above the rest. Neither of these are mutually exclusive. You can actually do a combination, but these are core directions that you could potentially take. So let's understand a little bit the persona-centric. This is an example where we have three core personas, the C-suite, ITDM, and engineers, and really mapping out what motivates them, what is their job to be done, and also what is their content need. Their content need needs to be able to address their motivators or their key motivations, as well as their job to be done. And from there, we can potentially map out a content plan. So building out a content plan is covering various areas. We need to think about the types of content, the format that really tailors very nicely for each of these personas. So for example, we talked a little bit about the C-suite in the previous slide. So for the C-suite here, we're going to be covering in the awareness phase, future innovation, industry thought leadership in the format of a blog or an article, and we can promote that and reach these audiences using our sponsored content static image or carousel. Next, we actually have the consideration phase. So how we can drive consideration for the C-suite persona is running customer stories, customer success stories, and also solution-driven stories, either via video or carousel. And then lastly, we have content or solution-led content, which can be leveraged with our lead gen forms to help get those conversions. And if we're going to switch gears and look at a competitor-centric approach, we want to be able to map out all of our competitors' content across the funnel to see where potential gaps are and to also understand where your potential white space is. So, for example, we can actually go in and examine our competitors' content both on an organic and paid scale to understand, okay, these are the initiatives that they're running, and being able to then plug those gaps and really fill out your content strategy. And here's a fantastic cheat sheet to also help you carve out what kind of content works for each stage of the funnel to ensure that we are rolling out a full funnel approach when it comes to our ABM marketing efforts. So for awareness, think about industry trends, solutions videos, infographics, blog posts, and that can be run in single image or video ads. And then for the consideration phase, think about leveraging localized success stories, best practice guides, tools, resources, any kind of product demos or trials. And this can be in the format of carousel and conversation ads, so you have a feed and inbox approach to reach your audience. And then lastly, for any kind of conversion where you want to drive ebooks, white paper downloads, webinar registrations, try and leverage message ads and lead gen forms. So you can also leverage retargeting and match audiences here as well. And now I'm going to hand it over to Roy, who's going to talk a little bit about all the great things and best practices when it comes to content and messaging. Over to you, Roy.
Thanks, Olivia. Top of the list on best practices, having strong brand recall. And one way to do this, having a distinct look and feel that is uniquely yours. Some best-in-class examples include EY, Ernst & Young, with their yellow trapezium and yellow streaks across all their content pieces. On the right-hand side of the screen, Salesforce takes on a different approach with their mascot and colors. It really stands out in a news feed when you see their content. Don't reinvent the wheel, scale your content. You can also create a very distinct approach with one asset. Accenture uses this example of a trend report and builds it out further by breaking it down into similar or smaller pieces of content, but they all still tie in nicely, very distinctively. So this is another great way to have a really ownable look when it comes to content. Yes, hashtags are a thing on LinkedIn as well. And there are some early returns that show an increase in click-through rate and viral actions, such as shares, like, comments, when using hashtags on the platform. Some guidance, don't use 100 of them, stick to 1 to 3, and use a mix of own hashtags and broader reach hashtags that are specific to your audience. You can test them out to see which are working based on performance and based on your KPIs. So hashtags are incredibly helpful in this journey too. They are most impactful when used to drive and highlight topics in your content. We've seen CTR gains and viral action gains among top benefits for including hashtags in your content. Just a bit more into these 3 examples. For highlighting of events, this would be more for real-time interaction. For topics, this is really to call out the product and service to the audience. And for campaigns, this is really used mainly to drive awareness. So we definitely recommend using at least 3 hashtags for each post. Creative tip number 4. We talked a little bit about earlier analyzing your headline copy for blog posts. What this slide illustrates really are the words and phrases that show up the most in the content that is shared most on LinkedIn. It's not an encouragement to turn all your blog posts into clickbait, but what it should do is help you to rethink not only how you write, but also how you structure your content. In this particular example, they called out their audience personalization. You would see, apart from calling out marketers, they called out APAC marketers. This is a classic example of localization and calling out your audiences, which see a much higher CTR, 53% increase. Okay, on to content personalization. So Jabra targeted LinkedIn. And this is an example of honing in on one of the larger accounts. LinkedIn, in this case, one-to-few strategy in ABM. It was a workforce of 15K that was targeted very effectively, resulting in a 1.58% click-through rate to the employee program registrations page. So to reiterate, since ABM is essentially about customization, this does not get any more personalized. Another way you can content personalize is by vertical. So it would fall under a one-to-few or one-to-many approach. And when a single vertical is the target audience, this is what it will be like. In this example, retail was the target audience. Also, take note, they use a multi-ad product approach here. In the background, you would see they use sponsored content to reach out initially, and then they coupled that with sponsored messaging in parallel. So when this audience was retargeted using sponsored messaging, the campaign achieved a 6% uplift in CTR overall with a 7.3% conversion rate. I'm going to bring you quickly through some measurements. Measurement of ABM success at each buyer stage is really important. So some key metrics that you can consider at the top of the funnel will include unique reach, share of voice, and click-through rates. In mid-funnel, when the buyer is in their own stage of solutions exploration and/or requirements, you could possibly consider looking at measurements such as ad engagement, website engagement, and MQLs, and the time they take to convert to SQLs. And finally, in lower funnel, you might want to take a look at some metrics such as time to close and the revenue that each deal brings. This would differ from customer to customer, but it's basically how you set that KPIs and determine them that is important to get right as you try. So we mentioned earlier on that our platform enables you to optimize campaigns based on your objective. But when it comes to tracking results, what exactly should you be measuring? First off, we know that not all results are equal to value or not equal in value to your business. For example, if your campaign gets 1,000 clicks, it's important to know that they came from a group of 1,000 ideal customers, because clicks from lower value audiences would indicate a less effective use of your marketing budget. Well, LinkedIn makes it easy to understand the results your campaigns are driving by professional audience segmentation. So if you use Campaign Manager's demographic reporting, you can measure the reach, engagement, and conversions you're getting based on several professional characteristics such as job seniority, company name, job function, industry, and more. You can then use this information to validate the results you're getting, right down to the leads you're collecting through your campaigns. Are they from the people who matter most to your business? If some of you recall, we had used this very same tool in the earlier step of alignment between sales and marketing team. And the sharing that we have for you here is that this is an ongoing and organic process. It's not necessarily something you take through steps 1 to 5 and are done with it. Don't be afraid to take a couple of steps back, redo the SWOT analysis from time to time, and keep tweaking your strategies as changes arise. This is definitely how your teams can grow stronger together and continue to drive even greater business success. With that, please allow me to hand the time back to Olivia, who will run through LinkedIn's solutions to unlock ABM success.
Thank you so much, Roy. That was really insightful. And now I'm going to chat a little bit about our solutions to help unlock your ABM success. So walking through some of our advertising formats, regardless of your objectives, our ad products are designed to keep you in front of your audience that matter to your business. Our ads are designed to feel seamlessly put in place with other updates and elements of the LinkedIn feed and boxes and inboxes. While members are on LinkedIn, they're learning about a new topic, catching up on news, or getting updates on colleagues' latest achievements. Your ads, whether they may be powerful videos, evocative images, or personalized messages, become a part of that experience. Our ads can be placed across the platform in feed at the top or right of the page, and also directly in your LinkedIn inbox. You can share one message or multiple by using a variety of formats, including carousel. Our ads can also capture relevant information for you as you nurture buyers along the journey. Whether you're engaging in back and forth dialogue with our conversation ads or asking them to fill out a form on our lead gen ad unit, we make it easier for marketers to collect all the information that you need. I've highlighted a few of those key formats for you here today with sponsor content, sponsor messaging, and right rail ads. And now we want to also make sure that we can leverage our community of leading account-based marketing partners to help your strategy go further in 3 key areas. Number 1, audiences. We want to help enhance your audience data. And through these partners, you can actually use a combination of your data and your partner's data for a highly targeted ABM campaign. Next, campaign management. We want to help optimize your campaign management with the help of our partners to create, manage, measure, and optimize ABM campaigns at scale. And lastly, reporting and ROI. How do we make sure that our ABM efforts are actually creating an impact? And when you involve our partners, they will be able to support you with reporting and measuring ROI. So Roy and I have covered a lot today. And we want to just recap those 5 steps to driving a content-powered ABM strategy so we can make sure that we can now take the next steps to success. Number 1, marketing and sales alignment is key and is an ongoing collaboration. Number 2, we need to understand our buyer and also understand the vast buying committee and making sure that we target everyone that sits within that committee. Then, once we understand steps 1 and 2, we can move on to building a content plan that is tailored to our audience personas and segments. And then Roy was able to share with us, always practice best practice to make sure that you make an impact in the newsfeed or in the LinkedIn inbox. And lastly, let's set our measurement tools and metrics so you can improve ROI along the way. And now I would like to thank you so much for joining our webinar. And here we have a Q&A. So we'll be online for about 50 minutes answering questions through our portal, and we'll definitely try and answer as many as possible. And in addition to that, there is a survey which takes approximately 2 minutes to complete and will help us improve our future sessions. So we would really appreciate your feedback. Thank you so much. We hope you enjoyed today's webinar, and on behalf of Roy and myself, we hope to see you next time.